and call our meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. And the first item is to amend if necessary, but then accept the agenda. Have you all had the chance to look over the agenda, and do we need to add anything this evening?
Motion to accept the agenda as circulated.
Seconded.
All in favor, raise your hand. Say aye. Any opposed? Seeing, hearing none, the motion carries. Let's proceed to item number 2, which is
Can you hear me now?
about
Yes,
Yes,
Wendy.
we can hear you, Wendy.
Are we good?
She
Can
just
you hear us?
muted- She just muted herself.
Can you hear us, Wendy? I'm not sure she can hear us.
Coming in and out. She might not be able to.
Wendy, can you hear us?
No.
We cannot
Oh,
hear you.
yes.
Wendy.
We can't hear you when you're muted.
No, but if she can't hear us, she may need to sign on and off and on again.
Mhm.
Wendy, can you hear us now? We can hear you, I think. Say something.
I connected.
There you
We
go.
can hear you. Can you hear us?
Don't touch anything. You're
I don't
on.
think she can hear us.
Oh,
Who's texting? Who is chatting her?
I did.
I see. Okay.
if she gets it.
Can you hear me now?
We can
Yes,
hear you. Can you hear
Can you-
us? No, she's chatting back to us.
Melissa, suggest she sign off and come back. I know you don't want. No, you can stay.
Very cute, Libby.
Who are we seeing, Liddy? Who is that?
This is a Norfolk Terrier named Dory, and she's gotten used to the fact that Zoom meetings mean there's apt to be a dog on the screen.
Oh, well, Stella's here. Just
She doesn't get the vote, though.
Stella, yeah, you want to see the dog?
If I can't vote, the dog can't vote.
Right.
Wendy
The
is
vote
still
isn't
off.
even an
Yeah,
alternate.
I don't think she's seeing our chat either. There, she maybe she did. She just signed off.
Okay. I think that what we should do is skip over item 2 until Wendy is back. We're going to have somebody fill in for the minutes for the treasurer's report, but maybe that would be easy enough to move forward with. And then maybe by that time, Wendy will be back in. Oh, she's back in. Hold on. Let's see.
Still, she's got us. We still
Can
can't
you hear
hear
us
her.
now, Wendy?
We can't hear you, Wendy. You're muted.
Okay. How's that?
Oh, there you are.
Yeah,
I don't know what that was all about. Okay, here I am.
good.
Well
All
done,
right.
Madam Secretary.
Sorry.
No, Dory, no.
So, so Wendy, I don't know if you could tell that this was going on during the early part. We called the meeting to order. It was 7:01.
Okay.
We accepted the agenda with no amendments.
It was Melissa and Liddy.
And then Liddy seconded that motion.
Okay.
Okay, so we're moving on to the minutes, and we have 2 sets. We have our March meeting and our May meeting. up for approval tonight. And as you all saw from, I think, my email of yesterday, Darlene suggested that what we do with our minutes is that when the draft minutes come out, they use a particular footer that the Inland Wetlands Commission and the P&Z Commission, among others, use that indicates that all minutes are draft until they're approved at a subsequent meeting. And then what Darlene says that we should do is put the text of the amendment in the minutes of the meeting that is happening when we approve those minutes. So in other words, what we would do today for our March meeting minutes, which were meant to be amended, but somehow the changes didn't quite carry over. So just to be doubly sure, is that we should state what the amendment is now, and then approve the minutes. And that would be the only place. So you would not go back and change the minutes that were attached and are already posted on the town's website. Is that clear? Yeah.
I really don't know what happened. I inserted Yoss's amendment. I must have sent the wrong version.
Well, even though, Wendy, that is not how Darlene recommends and would prefer it to be. I don't know. There are different ways and styles of doing minutes, and anyway, she suggested that we do this going forward, and it seems to be a practice that would have been helpful to us whether or not the changes got into the new minutes. So without I think that this was her general suggestion, not just this one, and she knew that we'd have a chance to practice. So
would you then insert a whole new paragraph into the review of the minutes for this meeting? And so it would be listed under the review of the minutes for next meeting. And
no,
this if it's accepted.
I don't know. Let me describe.
Because the text has to be in somewhere, right? If that gets
So let me
amended.
describe that, and let's see if we agree that this is what she was saying. I actually called her just to make double sure what I thought she was saying. So the minutes from this particular meeting under agenda item 2A would say the minutes of the March 17th, 2021 meeting were amended as follows, and then they would insert Yoss's paragraph, which actually I have one slight tweak to the final sentence. And so I'll read Yoss's paragraph and can send you this also, Wendy, just so that we get it exactly right. But here is the amendment. Yoss wants us to be aware of a proposed zoning amendment that will go to a public hearing with Planning and Zoning Commission in May. It would allow conservation development in the village residential districts, but presently only allowed in the rural district, with minimum lot sizes cut in half in return for setting aside at least 40% of the parcel as open space. According to Yoss, it seems intended specifically for one 13-acre parcel along North Main Street opposite Cobble Lane that is part of the Northern Gateway town character area. Even though he doesn't like to see that parcel developed, he is not opposed to allowing a more flexible layout on a smaller part of the parcel if development is unavoidable. Yoss would like the KCC and/or Kent Land Trust to have some involvement, and he doesn't see it as a good option for other parcels in the village district. He also stated that the subdivision regulations should be updated ASAP since they don't comply with the recently rewritten zoning regulations. And here's my slight tweak to that final sentence. Connie sees a role for the KCC in monitoring the proposed zoning amendment, but likely not for the KLT, the interests of which would more likely be in the siting and ownership/management of set-aside open space, if any, in connection with specific conservation development. Connie suggested we put further discussion on the agenda for our April meeting.
That's
Okay.
good.
Okay? Okay.
Send a
entertain
copy
a
of that to
motion.
Wendy.
I will.
We have to vote on it.
I'll entertain a motion to amend those minutes as just stated,
So moved.
and a
Seconded.
second if I,
I'll second.
Who was that? That
and
was Melissa and
Liddy.
Melissa and Lydia.
any further discussion? I'll call a vote. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. All right, great. So the second item 2B is the minutes of our regular meeting from May. And I did find a few things that needed a slight amendment. Number 1, under item 5B, the new executive director at the COG is named Rob, R-O-B, Phillips, not Rod. Number 2, also under 5B, it's not Kathy Wick, it's Khaki Wick. So that should be capital C-A-C-I-W-C, the Connecticut Association for Conservation and Inland Wetland Commissions. The third is that it's muffins and martins, not muffins and meadowlarks. And then the fourth and final is that the section about Mike, I think that it would be better if there were a sentence at the end expressing that all concurred, because right now it just says that Melissa made a recommendation, but it's just kind of hanging. So if we could say that everyone agreed and that Connie will take that action, that would be, to me, the appropriate amendment to that section.
Mhm.
Does anyone else have any
And then-
suggested amendments?
I have one little thing in O, for O, it's not opposite Cobble Road, but it's opposite Cobble Lane.
Oh.
And in 2, it says under new business, that should be under old business. So that the amendment or the agenda was amended, and item 6 I was added under old business. And then a general remark, you use a new numbering here, Wendy. Why not stick to the numbering of the agenda? That seems more logical, wouldn't it?
He's busy writing.
And if not for this time, but for next time, just
Okay.
in general, I was thinking.
Okay.
I did find that helpful in following the P&Z materials that I reviewed for tonight's meeting. So I think it's less of an issue for ours, but might be a helpful, model to follow. Okay, Any further amendments? I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So moved.
In a second?
Sure, second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor,
Who
raise
seconded
your
that?
hand.
Who seconded?
Liddy, we're keeping it simple for you, Wendy. It's Melissa and Liddy the whole way
I
through.
can look up and write down at the same time.
We're keeping it simple.
Okay.
Okay, so all in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you. Let's move on to the treasurer's report.
Treasurer's report. I was hoping to get feedback from Barbara Herbst, but I didn't. So these are my numbers. They're the same as last month, except that we did pay $270 for more books to be more trail books to be printed. The reason we did it was to, in effect, reimburse Cougar the way Kent Land Trust and the Weandanug had paid in. We needed to, and rather than asking them to transfer monies from us, it seemed to be easier to just pay a bill from us. So that's the only expense this month. And then I didn't from her, unfortunately, get an update on the Cougar Fund, but if I believe my numbers, and we have had success at Sportsman Connection, they have bought 25 books, and the Kent Bookstore has bought 40 books. So they seem to be selling like hotcakes. We charge them $15. They sell them for 20. But that's their business. We don't care. And so at the moment we have $10,000 in Cougar. Part of that is the Arboretum Fund, and $9,664 of it is for our trees in the Cougar Fund. Now, I do need to substantiate that with Barbara the next time I get a report from her, but I believe that that's accurate.
So
As a
there are
matter
separate
of-
lines within the Google Funds for different items?
Yes, well, I kind of want to keep track of it that way. I need to know when the Kent Bookstore pays their bill, when the Sportsman Connection pays their bill. So yeah, I have lines for each one of those.
Do I need to list all these numbers, or do I just say refer to Liddy's treasurer's report?
You know, you could do the total number, the $9,664 in our Cougar Fund for trees, and then $462 in our maintain trees, the Arboretum Fund that we set up.
I think you're right though, Wendy, as long as Liddy's report is attached to the document, you can refer to Liddy's report, as long as you put it all together.
I mean,
Liddy's report isn't always attached to the document.
No, but if you make that comment, then you have to do that, is my point.
Okay. I don't know. I'd kind of like to have it substantiated by the town treasurer though.
Yeah. I think that,
Let's have-
So what if
Written
Wendy just
report.
puts those two numbers in, and then next month we'll solidify it?
that sounds great. I
You
think
okay
we'll
with
end
that?
up spending some money on trees this coming year if the gypsy moth caterpillars are as bad as I'm hearing they are. They're at the
Yes,
higher
sir.
elevations right now, but just today in my own property, it was kind of scary seeing how many I was finding.
So is it gypsy moths? I heard somebody else mentioning it too, because gypsy moths haven't been around in Western
There's a-
Canada for many years.
We haven't had them because there's a fungus that takes care of them. Normally the wet weather along with this fungus, this bacteria grows, and we didn't have that because we had a very dry, hot spring.
Mhm.
So when I talked to Jocelyn today of Arbor Services, she was saying, maybe yesterday and the day before, the little rain that we had last week, maybe that'll bring that bacteria back, but it's not good. The pictures that I'm getting are really bad.
it's rampant up in Cornwall.
Cornwall,
It's the higher elevations. It's Cornwall, Sharon, Skiff Mountain, the tops of the elevations it seems to have hit. But like I said, today when I was walking around my own property, it seems to have come over to us.
Yeah.
So it's up on
Well,
Skip
it's
Mountain
mostly for the
already?
oaks.
Yeah,
and
a
they go
client
into
in
higher
Sharon,
Yeah.
this up on Skiff Mountain, but just over onto Sharon's
Really?
side, up by Marblewood. And then the kids were at Audubon today and they said it was really bad. So
Uh,
I think within a week, we will probably all see what I'm hearing about, unfortunately, unless this bacteria, unless the rain was good, you know, we need beneficial rain to make this stop this, unless it's gone too far.
And then the fungus will take some time too to spread.
That bacteria is Thuringia or something, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that. I don't have the name in my head right now, but she
Okay.
said it in
Are
an
there
email.
any particular species of trees that go for more than others?
Oh,
Yeah, oak trees.
Oak.
All right, folks, I think we need to move on in the agenda because we do have a couple of, important agenda items that might take us a while to get through. So anyway, though, it's a good point, Melissa, that we may have more tree replacement costs. And let's see, but hopefully not. Anything more on the treasurer's report on our financial before moving on?
Just to
Yeah,
bring Mike
but-
up to speed, he probably doesn't know. The Kuga Fund is for that tree replacement type of projects. So it's a special fund set aside for that in really small, quick summary.
I was about in the public comment section, I was going to ask what the Cougar Fund was. So there you go.
And Wendy has the whole story about it. She can tell you lots of things about
I found it, as a matter of fact,
it. Yeah.
hidden away.
We'll tell you at another time when we don't have so much on the agenda.
Okay, thanks.
It's a good story.
Wendy,
Okay,
is that something that's written down? Do you have a written thing about it, or is it just, we always hear you talk about it?
I don't know.
Okay,
I have
never mind.
some-
it is written down. We
I
have
have
it.
something written and I also have the book.
I have the book too.
Okay, all right, we're gonna move into old business and agenda item 5A. Unless, Mike, I think, you are allowed to comment whenever you want on this agenda, but if there's anything specific that you want to say to public comment, otherwise, I think we should move into the old business.
It's
Okay.
all good.
Great. Okay. So item 5A is this proposed amendment to the zoning regulations that Yost has been trying to get us to focus on for several months. Thank you, Yost. And I attended the P&Z meeting along with Yost last week on the 10th to try and get a sense of where this was at. And P&Z has put it on for public hearing again, basically because of some of the challenges noted at our meeting last month with respect to giving the public adequate notice of the text of the proposed amendment. And so I really hope that you did have a chance to look at the materials that were in the Google Drive that are, noticed along with this public hearing notice. The public hearing itself will be on Thursday, June 24th at 7 p.m. And I myself spent I want to say it was maybe as much as 3 hours this morning briefing myself on those materials just so I could try to get a sense of what happened and what the import of the change actually is. Ultimately, I ended up emailing Matt Winter to see, why it is that he believes that the regulation amendments would not be as Yost said they were, because I was getting the same result as Yost was pointing out in his individual letter. So let me see if I can try to enumerate that. It seems to me, and those materials didn't go all the way back to January, but of course, Yost in his letter referenced that in January was like the first time that a change was proposed, and there was different text that we don't have access to at the moment. we could probably go back and check on that. But in any case, since March, new language has been proposed, and that is the language that is proposed for the amendment that is up for public hearing at the end of June. And essentially what this does is that currently, under the current regulations, the village residential districts 1 and 2 allow for a development of up to 8 dwellings, each on 1 acre lots. So there's a limit to 8 dwellings. And the proposed subdivision is 12.8 acres, and the developer wanted to be able to put more than 8. In fact, 13, I think, was what was proposed in the application. So the idea was that in order to incentivize the set aside of open space, the way that we do in the rural districts, we being the town, not the Conservation Commission, that the regs could be amended to allow for more density, more houses, with an accompanying set aside of 40% open space. So what was proposed is that for any parcel of more than 5 lots proposed, or a larger than 10-acre parcel in the Village Residential District 1, that there be a formula where you divide the total area by 5,000 square feet and then multiply by 0.85 to get the maximum number of lots. And in the Village Residential District 2, that a formula is applied where the maximum, the total area of the parcel to be developed is divided by 15,000 square feet and then multiplied by 0.85 to get the maximum number of lots. The particular project under consideration, which wouldn't be the only one if this regulation were to be amended, but the particular one, just as a test case, has a total area of 557,568 square feet, because 1 acre has 43,560 square feet, and this is 12.8 acres. So you get that total area, and you divide that by 15,000, which is this particular parcel is in the Village Residential District 2. So you divide it by 15,000. I got 31.6 lots, which Joseph's contention was, this is double the number of lots that you were initially considering. To me, if true, if that's really how it operates, that is probably beyond what is needed. I mean, this particular thing came up because they wanted 13 lots in the 12.8 acres. 15 lots would be the way. If it was as Yost stated, 15 lots would have been what that calculation would get you. To me, 31.6 lots seems a little bit beyond what is necessary. Did anyone else get anything different?
Those are what the
Connie, have
numbers
you
are.
written down this statement you just made with the zillions of numbers and arguments?
I haven't verified this statement that I
Well, you
just
didn't-
made.
Type all
Email.
the detail, just the general idea.
Yeah, you can just say
And
that,
the minutes don't have to be that detailed.
Right.
calculation seems to result in a number that's denser than what, than what is needed and what is desirable. So, the other thing that I should say is that the Planning and Zoning Commission had on its agenda, a discussion under new business of Yose's letter, but they tabled that and instead decided that they would cover it because they would respond to, Yose's questions and assertions at the public meeting, the public hearing, that is, which is fine, except that I don't know really why it is that, why it is that the P&Z thinks that the interpretation that Yost had that I came up with too is incorrect. So I sent the email to Matt to see if I could get some clarification. He emailed me back. He said, he just had a chance to look at my email and that he believes that our interpretation is wrong, but he didn't say how.
Yeah, I don't understand their reasoning. I think our interpretation is right, except the only thing is the open space. Since there's 40% open space set aside, they can't get the full 31.6 or 31 parcels, but they would still have 60% of the land, which is more than 50%, which is the doubling that they have now. Plus, if you look at this particular subdivision, the open space set aside is mainly steep slopes, and the lower area in the back, which was very hard to access. All the important lands, the whole view shed is all built up with lots. So from an open space point of view, it makes no sense. I don't call this an open space subdivision. And if you would try to do a subdivision on this parcel under the existing regulations, you would only get like 8 parcels. You wouldn't be able to get this many. There are actually 14 building lots, 13 are have a house, and the 14th has a community building. So I call that 14 building lots. But he wouldn't have been able to get this many lots as he has now, and that's why he did it. He didn't do it for the open space. I said in the earlier P&Z meeting that I regarded this as greenwashing, and they didn't agree with that. They thought we're protecting open space, and we're not.
I think that, I think the jargon might not be all that helpful. I also think that the motivation of the developer is not really of our concern, and that certainly the P&Z can't take that into account. So I don't know, how useful it is to really discuss the motivation of the developer, but I think that it is helpful to discuss, the conservation impact of the proposed amendment. Now, when I read the proposed amendment, there are 2 categories of things, characteristics, factors, if you will, that go into the choosing of the open space. And actually, steep slopes is one of the primary. So to have
What is? I didn't hear that.
It's one of the, so there are, I'm going to click back into it. So I'm looking at the proposed section 6702, which is overall design of the development. And you can see that there are these categories of conservation areas that are meant to be taken into account when deciding on the siting of that open space. And so primary conservation areas include watercourses, wetlands, vernal pools, steep slopes, and 100-year floodplain. Now, steep slopes are defined as 25% or more, so that I can't verify, with respect to the application for special permit that pertains to this particular parcel. But secondary conservation areas, things that you would look at next after those 5 enumerated primary conservation areas, include prime farmland soils, farm fields, areas within 100 feet of existing streets or roads, which would seem to get to the scenic aspect, areas within 50 feet of a wetland or within 100 feet of a watercourse or vernal pool, 500-year floodplains, ridge lines, scenic views and vistas, again, so scenic areas identified as town character areas, NDDB sites, notable individual trees, and mature woodlands, stone walls, and possible open space and trail connections. So there are a number of different factors, but I did just want to point out that steep slopes is something that they would consider first above those other worthy factors that are conservation oriented.
Yeah, this whole page is taken from the existing conservation development for the rural district. So nothing changed, but the primary conservation areas are all areas that are basically unbuildable and that normally can't be taken into account because they're non-buildable areas.
I think, though, that we would be hard-pressed to argue that we disagree with the wording of the conservation development standards here when we didn't in the
Well,
regular-
I'm not, but I'm just saying that if you only protect the steep slopes and the area that is inaccessible, then why call it a conservation development? It is-
Again, I think we were okay with it before. So, and we do realize that development of steep slopes is something that can be tremendously damaging to the environment. And so, but primary, secondary, I mean, they are all factors for consideration. And the way that this proposed amendment operates is that it is a special permit, which does need to go to a public hearing. So there is an opportunity for people to opine, and as I said before, I think that that's the kind of place where KLC certainly would be more likely to opine. I guess the thing that's a little difficult for me to discern is whether or not the Conservation Commission should take any action leading up to the public hearing based on the potential impact of this regulation to allow for, much denser development than we think is necessary. Because we may not have our answer until the 24th.
Could you just clarify where it stands now in terms of what's the upcoming procedure? Like what happens next?
So they're going to go back to reviewing the zoning amendment. They had adopted the zoning amendment, and at the last meeting, this new subdivision that complies with this new zoning amendment was up for public hearing, but they postponed it because their lawyer, the land use lawyer, told them that they could be sued if somebody opposed this because they hadn't properly posted the text of the amendment before the meeting, before the public hearing.
Right.
Therefore,
Well,
they
There was a
had to
clerical error.
redo the whole public hearing.
There was a clerical error.
But let's just, because I'm extremely right now cognizant of how our record looks. The lawyer did not say they could be sued because they made a mistake. Like that, and the P&Z did not do this only because of a threat of litigation. The P&Z recognized that there was confusion around this, and based on a multitude of factors, which you can read about in the minutes, they're already in the minutes of P&Z, so we don't have to misstate them here or even try to restate them. They determined that they were going to bring it back for yet another public hearing to, again, look to approve those amendments.
One thing I want to say, which is not for our minutes, is Yost, you are awesome. You are really awesome.
I think since we don't have an answer from Matt, that we really can't, as a commission, make any statements tonight as to what we feel because we don't understand it.
Right.
So, short of getting an answer from Matt at P&Z, explaining what it truly means, and then deciding if we want to have a special meeting just to conquer this, we can't as a group, or at least I'm not prepared to vote to have any statement at the hearing. As individuals, we all can have a statement.
So if we were to act, I just want to think going forward with the procedure. If we do decide to do something as a Conservation Commission, then it's at the hearing.
Well, if we decide to do something as a Conservation
I-
Commission, we have to actually decide that amongst ourselves at a special meeting. We can't make a decision right now what we're going to do.
Right, but I'm saying
So if we don't-
our decision would be to do something, but whatever we say or do happens at the meeting, the town meeting.
Correct. Or we can all or none speak as a individual at the town meeting. It's not a town meeting. It's a public hearing, a P&Z.
Public hearing. Okay, I wanted to get it straight.
And it's next
Yeah, and
Thursday.
I spoke as an individual, not as a conservation.
Correct.
Right.
And I think that makes a lot of sense for you to do that. You understand what your understanding of it is, right? We don't have any clarity as to what it is because it's not super clear. But maybe they can add something in if they realize that it isn't super clear to read it so it reads the way that they intended it to read.
So one option that we could
Mhm.
also take is, if we do get clarity and are able to hold a brief special meeting, we could submit testimony in the form of a letter instead of testifying at the public hearing itself. So that is also an option.
Sure. We don't know when hopefully he gets back to you tonight, but we don't know that.
He might be there now.
Mm.
Let's see.
No, he's at Lions Club.
Right.
But
Well,
then
did you
we'll-
ask him to get back to you, or is it just for them to review at the meeting, at the hearing?
No, I asked
Because I had
him-
sent him a letter and I didn't get a response. I didn't expect a response. But
I think
they
it-
took into
I
account at the
Check
hearing.
that he would respond prior to the public hearing. I mean, there is a reason why he believes that it doesn't operate that way, and we don't know what it is yet. So,
Right. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. But Yost, you are planning anyway to be testifying on your own the way you did last time.
Yeah.
I think it would be wise if we all were present, if possible, to listen. Because that is our one chance to speak up, right? So once it's voted on, it's there.
Mhm.
So, and
Yeah, and I'm surprised how few people show up at these public hearings. I mean, it's just people who proposed the amendments, and Midan and Connie last time, and even for this subdivision proposal, which was up originally for public hearing at the last meeting. I don't know if there was anybody else there present for that subject. Did you notice anybody, Connie, who you think was there for that subject? And I wonder if anybody in town actually knows about it, if people read these things.
I don't know, and I'm not going to guess. And it's also, the information is out there for people to know and participate. It's never been easier, as a matter of fact, to participate in a lot of meetings. So
Yeah,
you need
that's
a lot
true.
of time. You can from your own house. So
And I'm
so
glad
anyway,
how they now publish all the stuff that the Planning and Zoning Commission members get is now publicly available, because it wasn't available before. They made a comment also in the meeting that I could have seen this stuff before and mentioned it before, but it wasn't available before. It was not published anywhere. It was just given to the Planning and Zoning members. Now they're making it available. So if that's one good change that they've done, I think.
And on
maybe
Yeah, and
Connie, I want to
next time
compliment
we
you
do-
on your minutes, on your agenda. You did a great job with, I think you did it, Connie, with adding the links right into the agenda. I appreciate that. I really like how that, it makes it a lot easier to do your work, you know, to
Mhm.
get through before the meetings. And like
Yeah.
Donna did for the last P&Z, that was nice.
And I just want to say, I can't really speak to whether or not it, the material was there, it is there or not, like normally. I think that it wasn't there for that particular May, I guess, was it May, the May 6th meeting, the hearing.
Mhm.
Uh, So, but I feel like the town is pretty thorough, and I'm glad that we do have employees who are doing this, who are making sure that the public notices are posted and that things are available on the website. So, I guess I just want to just generally acknowledge that we have a town that's pretty decent, to that I don't think that there was any nefarious attempt to hide any information from the public. I really, having sat through the P&Z meeting, appreciate the dedication of the volunteers that serve on that commission. It's a
Mhm.
lot to do,
Mhm.
and it's a lot more formal than our meetings. So again, I kind of think that it is important for us to move forward with a spirit of cooperation and,
Mhm.
collegiality, because the folks serving on all of our commissions are really working and doing their best to serve the town.
Well, I think it goes to say that we want our agendas and our minutes to be as accurate and as inclusive so that others looking in don't feel like we are hiding anything from anyone. We want to be open.
And I also think it's one nice side effect of this whole COVID pandemic is the technology. We're really learning to take advantage of the technology in a much better way. So I think it's really there to help us. And I think the town is doing a great job. I agree with Tani.
By the way, one thing that came up at the meeting, they were talking about should they go back to in live meetings. And apparently the law now requires that if you do live meetings, you have to have it recorded too at the same time. And apparently the town does not have the technology yet to do both. So that was one reason for them to keep doing this via Zoom, their meetings.
That's in the process. Jean is working on getting the all the rooms wired for town meetings to be hybrid. So it's in the process and it will happen.
How long would that take?
I'm not sure I know an answer to that question, but I expect in a month or two it'll all be, whether it's just one room, the big room, or all of, the 2 or 3 conference rooms, who knows?
Okay, I think we're ready to move on to the next agenda item. Certainly, if I get a response from Matt Winter, I will forward that to you all with some sort of a conclusion about whether or not we ought to call a special meeting. You're welcome to, weigh in on that if you don't agree. But let's see what we get back first.
But we cannot
and-
discuss it in email. So you don't respond with content, respond with whether we should meet or not.
Okay. Are we ready to move on? Okay, good. The next item on the agenda is the POCD revision. So I think just as a reminder from earlier discussions, the PNC chose Planometrics as their consultant to go ahead with the revisions to the POCD, the update, if you will. And in last week's P&Z meeting, it came up that that Donna had not received any feedback from her letter, which went as went long enough ago that it was either December or January. I think she may have said January, but anyway, the initial letter that prompted us to look at the POCD and have the special meeting, which we did, to start discussing it. She was saying that she hadn't received any responses. So the P&Z, I believe, is looking for a response from us.
Yeah, so I was surprised to read in their minutes that they're not planning to have a lot of public input in the POCD process and public hearings. They thought that Glenn Chalder's original proposal had too many of the public input sessions, and they wanted to get rid of that, just one public hearing at the end. But they would get input from the commissions and so. But I think they should probably open it up a bit more to public input. In a lot of towns, works well, and a lot of people come out and people get interested in it. You get more buy-in. So they just want to do a survey and then one public hearing at the end. I don't know how you guys think about that.
I think I'm fine with having the commissions weigh in. It seems like the most like if you want to get through the process in a timely way, that seems like the most streamlined way to conduct this process. And we would have a voice anyway, since we are a commission. And I think that she also meant that she's reaching out to the nonprofits too. So it's not really, it's getting a lot of different legs out there.
And we held off on presenting our summary because we thought maybe we have to wait till there's a first draft or something like that we can respond to. But it seems they want something, they'd like something up front, right?
Joost, we held off on presenting our summary because it basically was very listy and detailed, and because of our observation that the POCD is currently written is pretty unorganized and not kind of distracting. I think that we believed at that time that Planometrics might do more listening sessions or have more, have an input process that, that allowed for a little bit more dialogue. But I also think that P&Z isn't necessarily looking for us to make comments on its process. I think that they are looking for our input on content, and particularly on content that relates to conservation. So I just don't know how much time we should bother talking about process related issues, because I don't know that it's going to make a huge difference. And I also don't know commission wise whether that is something that we ought to focus on or are being asked to focus on, unless we as a commission believe that the people need to provide more input on conservation issues, which could be true. I want to just really briefly kind of share share the notes that I took during our meeting. I mean, you can see here on the second page that basically, that there are so many different categories of content here that, in order for us to start to make comments that were really textually, dense, that we're talking about like a 20-page letter here, which we didn't really have time to do. And I don't know whether or not that's what they're looking for. Having gone back over, this was the agenda, if you remember, that we considered. Having gone back over our discussion from that evening and just thinking about what would be helpful for them. You know, I know one of the things that we had talked about was, you know, whether it would make sense to bring our POCD into alignment with regional and state plans that, you know, have, I mean, personally, I think that the COGS plan is pretty good. And I was always interested, following the publication of the COGS plan in 2017, in, you know, diving into it a little deeper and thinking about what it meant for our individual municipality. So, you know, we might provide the feedback to PNC that they take a look at those main goals and strategies, and, you know, think about what doing those, you know, how those applied in Kent and what needed to happen in order to make progress towards those particular strategies. You know, as I say here, I think that the order is maybe a little bit different for our particular town. And I think that our townspeople would probably put protecting natural resources above attracting and retaining young residents, but I could be wrong. Certainly Conservation Commission wise, that might be a thing for us to start with. I also think that, you know, we ought to lead with pointing out how our POCD doesn't address really important topics that kind of frame many of the issues we talk about, including climate change and resiliency generally, you know, because the 2012 one predates sustainable CT. And also, you know, back then it wasn't as if we didn't know about climate change, but it was not the everyday discussion that it is now, and it didn't color every single aspect of conservation the way that it does now. You know, again, it is the same for some equal access and equity discussions that would inform things like, you know, access to housing discussion in PCD. So I don't know.
I have a question for you. Does
Yeah.
anywhere in that plan have a line about conservation of resources in times of shortage? I mean, you know, we could really run into what serious water shortages in the future. Other things, and I don't think we have anything, or they have anything in there about generally discouraging the excess use of fertilizers, chemicals, etc. I think it's getting to be time for us to address that.
So in terms of fertilizers, and I'm sorry, because I was thinking about where to make that note. There were, if you recall, there were kind of like these categories, you know, plan of conservation and development, but in our current one, you know, there were aspects that were conservation related, aspects that were development related, and then aspects that were identified as, hold on, all right, aspects that were identified as community assets.
Behavioral.
I'm sorry?
Sort of behavioral aspects.
Well,
Like recreation.
And development will address what, I mean, it can only really address, right, within the control and the scope of the town. I mean, I believe that it's the Conservation Commission's you know, responsibility, or falls under our wheelhouse, to provide education to individual landowners about use of fertilizers and or not using them basically to protect water quality. But I think that as regards the town, that, it's really about how they treat their own land and roadsides and things like that. It's more like a municipal services type issue. It's interesting, Wendy. I think that that's almost like a sustainable CP thing and potential, but I don't know where to put that in the POCD.
So it seems that we were holding back in terms of giving our feedback until they really had the consultant and they really have a more formal thing available. But it seems to me that the big things that we see are missing, I think that we should be proactive and give them that feedback sooner rather than waiting to see if they have it.
Yeah, they
They
can.
want that. That's what they're asking for.
Yeah.
I remember years ago, there was a whole bunch of people circulating around town who were trying to get people to sign a pledge of not using fertilizer. Remember that? I went to one that I think Alice Hicks ran over in Kent Hollow.
Well, I mean, in the grand scheme, that's kind of what the KLT intern is doing by saying she wants, creating pollinator pathways is kind of saying, just don't spray. Be more careful.
Right. That was a water quality related initiative of the HVA. That's still going, as a matter of fact, and I don't know why I can't think of the name of it right now. It's really bugging me. But I think that also, like the POCD will most certainly, because they all do mention, working with, in partnership with private organizations to help do community education. But are you saying, Wendy, that you think the town itself should provide that community education? And if so, whose job that is, right? That's us.
Yeah, well, I think it's important enough. What's happening to our water supply is enough source of concern that we have to be more proactive on that.
I mean, I think that if we make that comment to P&Z and ask that they insert it in the POCD, then, we have to be pretty committed to actually organizing and providing that.
Can it
So,
go
I
up
guess-
here though? Scroll your computer down there because it says road salt, tree management. So in that little category, I mean, adding it there, minimizing pesticide use for the roads.
Right, but that is about the town's own management of its land. That's about the town's use of fertilizers. And actually, I mean, this is a place where municipalities are far more regulated than private organizations
Mhm.
and private landowners in terms of what they can and cannot apply, to the lands that they own. I think it's perfectly acceptable that we would hope that the town would make a commitment to using, sustainable practices on its own land. But I don't know that, or maybe we do want to make a very clear statement that the town should provide its own education to landowners about conservation and environmental issues such as, minimizing fertilizer to protect water quality. If we do make that statement, though, I just, I really want to be clear that making a statement like that is us saying we should be doing this. Conservation
Oh.
Commission isn't doing its job here, and
I think we
so,
should. And
reading the POCD and reading this huge section about an economic development commission, and recognizing that in 10 years, we have totally not done that. There's a lot of things in the POCD that we haven't done. I want to make sure that we're true to ourselves. And if we make a recommendation that is really one that we own, that we're committed to doing it.
well, I know that when I first went to the town to the selectmen and said, I think you need to have a welcome to newcomers to this town so that they know they have to have a fire permit to do this, and they know these other things and what services, you know, what the rules are. They took it over happily because I was too busy, you know, and made it into something more for the Chamber of Commerce. But that doesn't diminish the fact that everybody who buys or rents a house in Kent has certain duty to the community to take care of the place. And they need education. And I see no harm, you know, if all we did was make a gatefold brochure that handed out and said, here are the rules for and suggestions for burning trash in your backyard, or putting old rusty cars in the neighborhood. There's just a bunch of things that, if they're stated, I think will help the general forward movement of the town.
I mean, it's not just for new people, it's for everybody.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But the easiest, you'd start by just automatically handing that out to new people. But when I discovered there were people who'd been here 20 years, you didn't know you needed a burn permit. I was absolutely gobsmacked.
Well, some people.
Well, I guess
don't
it's
take any-
where is the best and what's the best format for dispersing that kind of information? I mean, that's what we have to really think about.
Well,
Yeah, I think that it's not, I think we can add it to our own action list, but I'm not sure it fits in the POCD.
No, that's, I agree. Well, maybe some of it.
I mean, I think it should go onto our action list as an agenda item eventually, or sooner or later. But I'm not sure that,
well, when you say plan of conservation and development, it seems to me that this document ought to at least say, encourage the Conservation Commission to really educate the public. I mean, and nowhere there does it say that we have a role in conservation, which obviously we do.
Well, there are action points, and the Conservation Commission is co-responsible for a number of things
Well,
in that. So we just haven't
no, I just would
fulfilled
like to
all
see
the
it
actions like
on the
others have
list,
done.
that's all.
Yeah.
How we act on it is our business, but I think it's needed.
yeah, I see the POCD as a broader stroke, not like the minutia of what each commission is going to be acting on in the next 10 years.
I think it's legitimate. I really do, which is why I've just added it in here. I do want to, I want to make the point clear that, you know, making a comment like that is just kind of like, you know, is looking in a mirror. And that's fine. But it means, you know, and conservation commissions, I mean, it's in our charter that we provide public education. And I know that we try to do it. So, you know, it's not surprising to have it as a community asset.
I'm all for it, but I just I want to be wary that the town doesn't just turn everything over to us to take care of. And they also should be doing education. And you know what I'm saying? It's not just us.
Who would it be then? Who would it be? I mean, I think it is us.
I think it's us.
Who
But
would
you
you
don't think like the original pamphlet that Wendy was talking about, that wouldn't be coming from us. That would be, produced by the town.
Yes,
But in truth, it's not going to be produced by the town. It's being produced by the Chamber of Commerce. So it's not.
Yeah, but
It's
that's more of a shopping and church, you know, what
I'm
hour
not-
church is open and.
well, and I think until I see what their pamphlet looks like, I don't know if it actually accomplished what your initial goal was, right?
I'm pretty sure it won't. That's not.
and
their
that is not really a matter for the Conservation Commission. that is a good point made by a resident about, you know, how it is someone finds out information about how to do things in town, which is, it's completely legitimate, and I'm glad that we're doing it. We being a town, as a town, that is happening, but it's not really a matter for the Conservation Commission.
We also have to think about what would be a good way to spread our education message. I mean, things that we'd want people to know more about. How do we reach as many people as we can? Too often you reach only a couple of people, and then it's not worthwhile. But how can we reach a lot of people?
But I think really what's in front of us right now is a document that we want to make sure includes what we want, so that it's the springboard and the infrastructure that gives us to go ahead and do the education that we feel that we need to do. I mean, this document we need to be pleased with the things that are in there.
So, Connie, will you send us a copy of this, what you wrote up? Because that's a very nice list.
Right, it's not, it is kind of it's the same, for the most part, list that we reviewed in our earlier special meeting. I have no problem distributing it at all. So yes, to your question, Yost. And I think that what we ought to do is, having had a chance to review this, look again at the POCD, you know, have a conversation in our next meeting about how we're going to compile our thoughts, which, you know, range from the broad in scope to minutia, you know, and deliver those to the P&Z. And I my first inclination of, you know, not just giving them a, you know, a 10-page letter with every single thing in it, I still feel that that's probably best, that it would probably be most helpful for them if we could start broad and then maybe append you know, a suggested list of contents that we feel are important to have in there. But you know, I think that we're not ready to do that yet. We need to have more conversation.
I got the feeling though that they want this pretty soon, that we don't really have all the time in the world.
I mean, I suppose we could have a special meeting, but between now and our July meeting, we have the public hearing on the 24th. We have July 4th weekend. So it's really up to you and your appetite. I personally doubt that the town will move that far forward on it in a month that it, you know, would inordinately delay them.
Would it make sense procedurally to have basically the first page of this, the sort of top of the line items communicated soon, and then the minutia would be something that would come in later in the process, like when the public hearing happens?
I think it has to come before the public hearing so there's chance to review it and not like sprung on them, you know? But yes, I think that could work out very well.
The public hearing would be when they're basically ready, when they have a whole draft ready, and I think it'd be too late to come with something like this.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood that.
But
So
I think we can do it in steps, like add more detail as we go along. Come first with more general points, and then next month, a month later, come with more detailed information or ideas. So
The public hearing we were talking about is the public hearing for the change in the regulations.
oh no, that's something different.
Exactly. I know. I think Mike was getting the two crossed.
When we had our special meeting, we were all pretty much in agreement about a lot of things that were left out. And you know, and even talking about it tonight, the big items that we feel we want to make sure get included. So I really like Mike's suggestion of why don't we just we can just really go ahead now and submit that without submitting the whole thing. Mike, I think that's what you were suggesting.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I like that.
Couldn't write that up. Can Connie write that up?
Well, you had written it up, right? I mean,
Just
You
the
have some-
major points.
The big ideas. The big ideas.
Right.
Do you guys like what you're seeing here? Is this trending in the right direction?
Yes.
this is about everything, right? Not just about conservation. This is about everything, isn't it?
It is, it's a little general.
I don't know what number 4, strengthen our town centers and main streets means really.
That is, so those 6 goals are lifted verbatim from the Northwest Hills Council of Governments Plan of Conservation and Development. And the idea there is one that is related to economic sustainability. And
Okay, well,
so yeah.
just make
Yeah,
it
go ahead.
center singular and main street singular. Then it makes sense to me. I didn't know why it was plural.
Well, it's a quote.
I know, but that's,
It's a-
the Northwest COG is doing it for all the towns. We're only talking about our POCD. So it should be
Okay.
strengthen our town center and Main Street. That makes sense.
I could find a way to word a letter that would make that clear.
Okay.
I mean, basically, you're just saying we would like to see our Kent POCD modeled after the COGS POCD. And that's a big statement because I don't know if all of the P&Z members agree with that. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know if it's even been discussed yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's the way to say it, or to say, our Northwest Hills Council of Governments published a POCD that is meant to guide the 21 municipalities that are part of the COG, and that the goals and strategies that they articulate, we might, as a jumping off point for our POCD, consider how those goals and strategies apply to what we plan and hope to do in the town of Kent. I mean, so in other words, rather than go completely out, all the way to the end of the plank and say, use this as your table of contents, instead we're at least saying, if we address these issues, if we think about how these issues apply in Kent and what we can do in order to carry them forward, then that might be a really good way of, aligning with the more regional plan.
By the way, the Planning and Zoning Commission has a meeting about the POCD, first meeting with their consultants on the 29th at 6 p.m. So anybody who is interested can attend. We can't speak, but you can attend, you can listen to what their original plans are going to be. And we can respond to that afterwards.
And that's the whole commission, not just the members of the rewrite commission.
Right.
Everyone on the commission.
And maybe they'll, if somebody wants to say something, maybe you're even allowed to respond, but or make a comment.
I think if nothing else, it's good to listen in on to know the process. So you don't
Right.
have to listen. You might not have to listen live because it'll be the same as if you listen to the recording, but knowing the process will give us a better idea of how soon they expect this list from us.
Mhm. I think it'd be helpful for everybody to listen to that, and we'll know more about what they want to do.
What's the date again?
The 29th. Now, do you think we should send them something before that date or not?
I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at 5 minutes or so ago, is that I do feel like we do. I feel like they want something sooner than what we're really kind of talking about right now. And I think that Mike's idea was perfect, that does
agree.
that. Donna made the specific statement in the P&Z meeting that she had only heard back from, I don't know, inland wetlands or something.
Mhm.
So she was hoping to hear back from all of them before, even though I think we probably all saw it as one of those things where it was so monstrous a job because it needed so much work that we weren't really even sure the direction to go to or how to convey all of the work that needed to get done.
But instead of sitting back waiting to see if somebody there on those commissions also feel that there are big misses, that the climate change is not there, and let's not wait to see if they do it. Let's give them the ideas.
Seems to me if we just sent them the list, the 1 through 4 of major topics of concern, that would certainly give them something to chew on. You could do
Well, yeah,
that.
I agree with Melissa. We have to respond in some way.
Coming out of this
And I
meeting.
think Mike's idea of the big ideas, to respond, number one, definitely, and to respond with the big ideas that we see are missing, we want to make sure that they address them. I think that at least then we've got the foot in the door and we've started the conversation.
But so who's going to write that up, or do we take what we had for that special meeting and send that for now, and then we can add to it later?
No, I don't think that our special meeting notes.
They're too big.
Much too detailed.
Yeah, this first page is perfect with a cover letter of like what Connie has 1 through 5 down at the bottom. That's it. Like, I don't think that they want to see pages and pages.
Right.
That'll gloss. No one will read it. They'll just gloss over and eyes back in their head.
I think the bottom line could suggest that there's more detail that we've thought about, but these are the most important items.
Agreed.
Mhm.
Well stated, Liddy.
I have to run, folks.
Bye, Mike.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Why don't I try my hand at a 1-page letter? Maybe climbing over onto a 2nd page, but something concise enough that it really just opens the conversation, leads with some big ideas, including what these major misses are, or, I don't think that there were purposeful omissions. They're just there
No.
in development.
No, not at all. Yeah.
That was the first POCD, right? Like we didn't have a POCD in Kent before.
Well, we did have one,
We've had
but it was a small one, and it was written by the commission itself many years ago.
What year, Connie?
We did every 10 years, Melissa. I have.
No, I know, but when was the first one? Obviously it was like the 70s or
It was
after that. It wasn't.
1990, I believe. It was
It
when
was
Boone Moore was chairman.
And how much did it change from? That
changed
means
from-
this is our third, right?
It changed a
Or
lot.
fourth.
They're really interesting to read as you go, through the iterations. So if my memory serves, the second one was not substantially different from the first one. The first one, a lot of work went into, and then 2012, there was a lot of work put into POCD. It's not surprising to me that P&Z would not want to repeat all of that. Use my phone, with the many listening sessions and focus groups.
I remember that, but I feel like Yeah, I remember all that whole process, but your idea of what fun looking through things is and mine are two different things. It just did not sound fun to me.
I think it's time to come to a decision on what we're gonna do
I
here.
think we just did. I think we're done. I think your minutes can reflect that we are taking Connie's skeletal outline, and she is going to take a stab at writing a one-page letter that summarizes that.
Just our main points, maybe 5 points, and that's it.
There were 4, I think. The
Okay,
first
so-
page of our thing, yeah.
And circulate that letter. And should we have a special meeting that is about 10 to 15 minutes long so that we can just agree on the letter?
No, because it'll
No, I
take
think
2
it's
hours
I
to
think,
write.
well, I think we're agreeing right now what the content and everything of the letter is, so you're just refining it, and I trust you to just do it.
well, I think that we're probably going to get a special meeting out of what Matt responds to. So I don't think that I think that if there is legitimately something to discuss for the other topic, then yes, we can discuss it. But I think it's more important to get it to the hands of P&Z before that 29th meeting.
I agree.
Okay. Okay. We're going to move on. Thanks. I think that those are really the two, those were the 2 agenda items that were really the most meaty. So let's see, how quickly we can get through the rest of the agenda. Sustainable CT in Kent. The update here is that, as you know, a sustainability team was formed, and they have had 2 meetings. One of them was more about the forming, and the most recent on May, losing the date now, but you
Yeah, I
can
don't
see
have the
it
date.
there, was to begin talking substantively. There are minutes of that meeting, which you can read. I would say that, one thing that is one observation that I would make is that the members of the sustainability team, some of them are newer to town and are less likely to have information about what it is that we currently do, which is interesting because Sustainable CT is essentially a cataloging of what it is that you currently do and an identification of things that you might do that you currently are not doing. So I think that it may take a while for that team to, to find the information that they need. They definitely recognize that, and that they, recognize that they would need to reach out to partners, including us. So one thing proactively that we could do is look back on Sustainable CT and the aspects of that directly relate to our work, help to put together some of that information for the sustainability team. There's not currently another meeting scheduled, although the minutes indicate that it's their intent to have a meeting in June. It just is not, it's not on the books yet. So Melissa, who watched the meeting, I just read the minutes, may have some additional insight. And then I think Wendy knows a little bit more about Sustainable CT now than she did before, and maybe you might have some insight as well.
So I think that my takeaway to the meeting was that they were encouraged to reach out to us and watch our minutes, watch our meeting videos, look at our agendas, but also come sit in. So I'm a little surprised actually not to see them here. So hi, if you're watching. So there's so much happening that short of reaching out, I don't see how they will be able to accomplish their checklist. So I do hope that they reach out to either us as a group or a bunch of us as individuals and really pick our brains, because there's a lot to be gleaned from the wealth of business that everyone has done in the last 10 plus years here in Kent.
We could invite them to attend our meeting in, say, September, and spend that meeting talking through sustainable CT as it applies to the conservation measures. I mean, it would be an easy way to get everyone on the same page about that.
Yeah, I don't want
Looks like
to. I don't want to stop their creativity though in the way that they're coming about the project. Since we've chewed on the project for 3 to 4 years, you know, they're new to it, so I don't want to stifle the way that they go about collecting their information if they come to a different conclusion on how best to do it. You know,
Well, they can come to that meeting and be invited to ask us questions about the things that fall within conservation.
yeah, they just might not be there yet. You know, they might have.
They can say that.
Yeah, I would hope that they would reach out after their next meeting and have a better angle of how they're going to conquer the project.
Okay.
Did you have anything to add, Wendy,
Well,
about sustainable CT?
well, I told Connie this yesterday, I am actually working for New Milford as a paid editor on their natural resources inventory. They were clueless about what a big job it was. And even the abbreviated version that we're doing has to be done in August. And but they have an army of people working on stuff there. I cannot believe this is all run by Julie Bailey, who is a dynamo. But I mean, she calls me from 6:30 in the morning till 10 at night. And I imagine she calls 100 other people that way too. Her hope is that they're aiming to get the top, whatever, bronze or whatever it is. And I gather that if that happens, and it looks like it will, that opens the door to a lot of funding, which is something I didn't understand. I thought this is just, you got gold stars to put on the refrigerator. I didn't know why you wanted to be ranked in Sustainable Connecticut, but apparently there are prizes to be won.
So in the first meeting of our Kent team, they had a gal come and explain all that. And basically you don't have to be on our Kent team to find a project and come up with half the funding and apply for, they'll actually fund the other half if you write a proposal. So anyone, the Lions Club, the Conservation Commission, the Land Trust, anyone can come up with something that fits into one of the categories.
Well,
And
they don't seem to be concerned about getting the funding. First, they want to get the prize, but their plan in terms of the POs, natural resources inventory, is they want nothing less than to have one just like ours. And that's clearly going to take a lot of time. And, you know, instead of 2 months, it's 2 years at least we did it. And then some. But anyway,
It's nice that they appreciate our resource inventory. That's great.
Well,
Yeah.
I have discovered that in doing this for New Milford, I'm seeing new things to add to ours. So it's not as though
Mhm.
I'm much wiser now than I was a month ago about all this. And it's, you know, it's a little awkward. They hope to get a grant so that they can have the finer, bigger version of the NCRI to be written in the next year. But right now, we're just throwing together something that is much shorter, and it doesn't include cultural resources at all. But you might be interested to know that I've been in touch with, what's his name? Bellantoni, the retired archaeologist.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they have there are 20 sites in New Milford alone of Indian artifacts, including at least 2 or 3 that go back 12,000 years.
Wow.
I find that pretty interesting. Which
He's
means,
a fun guy to talk to. I really like
yeah,
talking to him.
oh yeah, he's very enthusiastic.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good descriptor.
Yeah.
I
So,
think that that will be as helpful to New Milford as it's been to our town. So I think that that is, one example of how sustainable CT can help to coordinate all of the different things that are going on in a town and actually result in some really helpful guidance and, some consensus building. So that's cool that you're doing that, Wendy. And
another thing that I came away with, and I'm embarrassed because probably all of you have been paying more attention all along, is the importance of these regional cogs, what they do, and the level of expertise they provide to towns nowadays. They haven't been around that long, but what the work they do is amazing. And I guess Kent makes use of quite a bit of it, but there's even more out there if we ask for it.
Yeah, I think that we're lucky ours is so strong because I'm not sure that they all are as strong as ours.
And New Milford is in a different one than
That's
Kent.
right. Yeah, they're in one with it's illogical. They're with Greenwich and Westport and so on, which is not so appropriate. But anyway.
Well, they had to, a number of years ago, they were forced to merge the smaller regional cogs. So
one
now
of the
they're
issues
all a lot bigger.
that's emerging, because I've done a lot of work on the Aquarian and what they're up to. It won't be long before Aquarian is going to decide whether if the next town needs more water and you've got it, they're going to take it from you whether you want it to happen or not. That Brookfield and New Milford are now joined in a joint water agreement, and another place, I guess it's a couple of the towns on the coast are borrowing water from inland towns. I mean, this tells you that we may have some tough times ahead. So
check your well. Anyway, okay, so sustainable CT. I think that, one thing that we can do is go on the town website, keep abreast of, meeting notices, read what they're up to. If you like, I can reach out and just say, we're here as a resource, and when you're ready, we'd love to have you do a joint meeting with us. September would be the next time that we could do it, because I'm thinking July is going to be crowded. We have some plans to have a guest from KLT talking about pollinator pathways and proposing that we look at a resolution that other towns have adopted. And we may or may not have more of a legislative recap at that time as well. So we can talk about that more when we get down there in the agenda.
I think you should wait to
Okay.
see if they reach out to you. I mean, that seemed like the direction they were going, so no rush. Since it's off in September, but meanwhile, they might reach out to all of us individually.
Well, Mike said he volunteered to join. But I don't think that he was contacted. No, I don't know.
I said
Okay.
dinner time.
What? It's dinner.
It's dinner time, yes.
You should eat before the meeting.
I don't have time.
Okay, let's move to waste management in Kent and Connecticut. I don't think I have anything new there. Does anyone else have anything new that they want to discuss today? Okay, let's table it. Kent Trails, a hiker's guide. Anything new that we need to discuss tonight, Liddy?
I don't think so. I told you about the Sportsman's Connection and the Kent Bookstore. The library has said they would rather, for the time being, not be selling them. It's just too complicated. They had one out at the book sale and then people would have to come into the library to get it. It just wasn't working. So our only two outlets now are Kent Bookstore and the Sportsman's Connection.
We sent a lot of people. Connie and I were at the farmer's market on Friday, and we sent quite a few people. We had one guide out on the table. It was an outdated one, but both of us referenced it and talking to people, turned to the maps and we're definitely using it. And where can we get this? Where can we get this? I mean, that was the question, and it was great to be able to say House of Books, Sportsman's, easy.
I have 19 left. So perhaps I'll check with both of our outlets and see what their plans are, but we may have to print some more. Connie, you suggested that in the fall, we should rethink whether we redo this thing and make all the changes there. Apparently there are trails being added in some of the preserves, and we certainly have to change the name of Leantonog. So maybe we should update it.
Okay.
We were talking to someone else. I can't even remember what town now, but they were like, our town doesn't have anything like this. And we were like, yeah, because we got ahead of that. We did it good.
I should mention that there is a new initiative out there. And so for those of you who are curious, I mean, I feel like we've got Kent pretty well covered in terms of our trails. If you're curious about trails elsewhere, not only is there the COG one that we did several years back and have linked to, but there's a new thing called Connecticut Trail Finder. It's something completely different. So there's all trails, there's the Blue Blaze trails, and there's Connecticut Trail Finder. And this organization is hopeful that trail managers will upload descriptions and photographs and everything about all of their own managed trails. And when they came to KLT, we said, go to our website, find the description of the trail that's already written, find the pictures that are already there and the map that's already there, and please use that. Let's not recreate the wheel. So that was helpful to us for KLT, but I wanted to let you know that that exists for those towns that are not as fortunate as we are. Okay, let's move on to the legislative session. You guys are probably aware that the session ended last week on June 9th, and that they went back into special session, which is happening right now. As Melissa mentioned earlier, they've been debating the marijuana bill all day today, but they also intended, I think, to try and see if they could get a little closer on the TCI, the transportation initiative that was climate focused. Also, I haven't been able to find much information about it, but if you go to Craig Minor's Facebook account, Senator Minor's Facebook account today, there was a lot of dialogue about what he is calling the implementer bill, which is a really long bill that is meant to show how the budget would be implemented. And
Yeah,
so
that's the other part of the budget. So they passed the budget, but the implementer has to go, or else we don't have a budget. So that was the key. That's probably what the whole session should have been about, but unfortunately they're still on cannabis at last I looked. So we'll see.
Well, maybe it's okay because the Republican comment was that that implementer bill is so dense and long and only released last night that it was really hard to go through it and have a good grasp of everything that was in it. And at least the comment was that there were some things buried in there that didn't have to do with the current budget. So we'll have to look. It was described as a potpourri of Democratic policy, actually, and apparently included a pay-as-you-throw provision, which never would have passed had it been proposed as a separate bill. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen. I think there's going to be a lot of editing in the next couple of days as things that came in removed I would be very, very surprised if pay-as-you-throw went through as that kind of a little add-on provision. But as you
It's very
saw,
disappointing.
but
Well, I want to say it's very disappointing how the Transportation Climate Initiative was brought down. I mean, the comments against it, that it's a tax and would add like 5 cents to the price of gas. And that's the reason to throw it out. This is so ridiculous. The gas prices fluctuate so much, and this does a whole lot more than just raise the gas price. This has a lot of positive benefits. So why does it get killed with some silly slogan?
When it came out in regular session, Maria actually introduced it in regular session. So she was on the floor for 5+ hours answering questions being thrown at her until they ended up saying, basically, I forget the terminology, but they basically tabled it until they could go. So they went on to other bills, and now it's coming back. So it was kind of interesting to watch and nerve-wracking and frustrating all in one. So we'll see.
I think that it is, as the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters email, described, I think it was a major success that the bottle bill got through. I mean, I think that if nothing else, that was, heroic efforts really to just remain steadfast through all of the many lobbying and attempts to kill it. So
And fairly bipartisan. It went through fairly bipartisan. So, I feel very lucky that we're going to see that big and impactful bill come through.
But for something that had bipartisan support to still experience so many issues and to really have a very difficult time getting past, it shouldn't surprise anyone, as unfortunate as it is, Yost, that TCI didn't get through. Its chances are pretty minimal in my opinion.
Yeah.
And a lot of really good legislation that was proposed didn't really go anywhere, including, of course, the municipal option, 6441, the great bills about extended producer responsibility, which was the packaging bill, and lots of single-use plastic proposed legislation.
I think in general, though, they didn't get a lot through because the camaraderie that is normally felt didn't happen until the last day. They didn't all finally say, enough of this. Let's be on the House floor and meet in person. They were still meeting in their individual offices doing COVID protocols. So they didn't have this camaraderie that generated deals and whatever happens on the floor that actually brings things to a more bipartisan conclusion. They had a lot of bills that didn't get passed because of that. So good things happening now because almost everyone is actually on the floor in person.
The bills that didn't make it through, can they be proposed again next year?
They'll get reworked in committee. And if they come out of committee as a reworked bill.
A reworked bill, yeah.
So
Okay.
it'll have that same name bottle bill. The general name, that common name that we use, but it'll have a different number.
Right, so it has to go through the whole process again and just come out.
Yeah, and the problem with the way the COVID worked, there was more amendments to the bills because that's how they were working their deals, as opposed to doing it right on the floor. It was going through lawyers, LOC, and getting to the amendment stage, and that was cumbersome. The process became much more cumbersome and harder to navigate and negotiate.
Mhm.
Melissa,
So past that.
Melissa, in what way are you involved in the Connecticut politics? I mean, do you have a formal role or position or what?
I've been helping with Maria. So I've been in contact with Maria.
So are you a paid
Nope.
assistant administrator? Oh, so it's all
Nope.
volunteer stuff?
Yep.
Wow.
I've seen 6441 in iterations for about 6 years now.
Yeah.
So, I think also, part of this is just a recognition. I mean, Bottle Bill hadn't been updated since it was like initially passed or something. I mean, some ridiculous
71 or
it's-
something, they said.
been. So,
Yeah.
it is very, very hard to make legislative change in Connecticut, especially on some issues. So anyway, we hope that at some point that Maria can come and give us some feedback and some, reflections on what this last session was like and what her predictions or, her forecast for next year is. Yeah. And we'll
When
see
in the
what comes out.
fall when's the date, remember, where they have to propose bills by? That usually October?
I don't have that in my head, the exact date.
I'm
And
just trying to remember what it was this year. Yeah,
It's very
it was different a
similar.
little this year because of COVID. So
okay.
Okay. Shall we move on to Western Connecticut Clean Air?
Nothing to report. We're just waiting on our Dr. Wagstrom. Her report is due. My co-chair called her yesterday and I don't know what answer she got, why we don't have it already.
who's the co-chair?
Linda Frank, who lives over in Lake Warramog, Town of Washington Conservation.
Great.
So
Okay, and how about the solar initiative?
that's kind of behind me now. I mean, we tried for 6 or 7 buildings and got one, but
So now it's in KCS's hands. Is that where we?
it's moving ahead. Dana Slaughter is probably the best authority on it, but no, I've totally stepped away.
Do we want to take that off the agenda?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if something changes and the law changes and there's a way to do more, you'll hear from me, or somebody else will notice.
There was discussion in one of the selectmen meeting, maybe about the fire department going ahead and reevaluating on their own.
That's fine. They didn't like the terms of the deal.
Yep.
Because, and part of the problem was that, they have two different services in the same
Yep.
building and neither one was using much electricity.
Yeah.
So it really, unless they could sell under a different set of terms, electricity to somebody else, it wasn't going to work out for them.
I think the message I took out of it was that they were pursuing that it was actively, they were still pursuing that, which made me happy.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
all I ever wanted to have happen, is to get
Right.
people who should be with
Yeah.
solar informed.
And Marvelwood turned theirs on, so that's cool. They posted about it on social media today again.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to note, one of the things I've checked out for the Sustainable Connecticut thing for New Milford is that in the winter, there are 10.5 hours of sun or, solar production per day. No, in the summer, and in the winter, in January, about 5.5. So, but because the cost of the equipment is going down and the cost of utility electricity is going up, it's still profitable in Connecticut, which we used to think was not the case.
So coincidentally, I attended a meeting of the state of Connecticut DEEP today that was on solar siting. And it's kind of like a follow-on to the GC3 recommendations, but it's all about considerations in siting, including using existing structures like rooftops and developed areas, and avoiding fragmentation of forests, not clear cutting core forest in order to put up solar installations, although it's cheaper to do it that way. And trying to look at conservation type characteristics like soils, and the impact of proposed solar siting on farms and farm fields. And it was not, there was nothing resolved, but there's a plan and there's considerations. And what's kind of interesting overall is that various people who have looked at this and studied the issue have concluded that, solar on its own, of course, is never going to get us where we need to be, right? That if we put solar every single place that we possibly could, where it made sense in terms of being able to link up to the grid, and be productive, that we still wouldn't solve our energy needs. And the state of Massachusetts has done something really interesting, using their, in many ways, better GIS data, than Connecticut has. And they have actually made like a prioritization and decision tree based on, all of the potential solar sites, including, undeveloped open space land. But like they have a real system and analysis for figuring out where the best places are in the entire state for solar, and where they ought to look first and where they should avoid, based on conservation analyses. So I hope that the state of Connecticut can get somewhere similar. This is, of course, a much more like looking at it a much more macro level than our thinking about buildings in Connecticut that could go solar, or in Kent, that is. I think that what we've done, in our town has been terrific. But I wanted to kind of give you some insight into what's happening at.
Have you
at a
been
state level.
following the situation with Candlelight Airport and the attempt by solar fans to cut all the trees down up there?
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to mention that in the New Milford NRI, but because there are just as many people who are pro-solar and think it's fine to cut the trees down as there are people who are horrified. And the issue is still in court, and the anti-solar people are trying to raise money to pay their legal bills. But it's something to watch. I don't know how it's going to end up.
Balancing land use issues is never, ever going to be any easier. It's only going to get harder from here on out. And there are just many factors to consider when making a decision. And so, I think that in many cases that fragmenting core forests or forest corridors might be a wrong decision, simply to realize a savings in a solar installation. At the same time, I think that we do need to look at our green infrastructure. So, I trend on the side of the ecosystem services that are provided by simply leaving a natural area at this point. I think that the quotient carbon-wise, and
carbon wise and wild animal wise and birds and everything else.
But that might not be the same for a smaller forest area. And so I think every decision is very individualized, and that we're learning all the time. So and that it's only going to get harder. But the best thing that we can do is like turn off our equipment, turn off our lights, turn off our computers, conserve a little bit of energy.
Where did Liddy go?
No, but it's true. I mean, that was a point made, in this morning's meeting is, there were many public statements made, but one person said, gee, this is all about where you can put solar as we expand it. And certainly that's a need, but nobody is talking about conservation of energy and how much we need to reduce what we are already doing.
Here, here.
Here.
My dog wants dinner.
My husband wants dinner.
New business, do we have any?
Better not.
No.
No,
Correspondence, none. We
So
are at,
what
what?
about that thing you brought up about the pollinator pathway? Was that going to be, were you going to announce that or not?
Next
on
meeting.
the agenda for next
Oh.
month.
But if you come to the farmer's market, not this week, but next week, you can see Connie and I and hear all about it.
Okay.
I will,
Connie and me.
assemble materials
Thank you.
for-
Who did that? You
for-
did.
And you can read on social media if you social media.
did we
Good night,
adjourn?
all.
Did we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn a 9:02.
Seconded.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, folks. Thank you so much.